Welcome to my review of episode 4 of The Last of Us. So this episode mainly focused on Joel and Ellie as they search for Joel's brother Tommy. It's a relatively short episode, rounding out at about 45 minutes. Given how amazing episode 3 was, it was an extremely tough act for episode 4 to follow. So for me, this episode wasn't as engaging or interesting. There wasn't as much happening in the episode, but I still enjoyed it overall. I enjoy every minute of this show, so at the end of every episode, I just want to watch the next one. So in that regard, this episode did its job. Even though there wasn't a great deal happening, this episode plays a very important role as a bonding episode for Joel and Ellie. It's a very necessary progression in their characters' relationship arc. I always love a good hate-to-love trope, so it's fun to see them go from disliking and mistrusting each other in episode 1 to both of them slowly letting their walls down and opening up to each other, even if that's not what they want. Like, Joel actively tries to avoid forming an attachment with Ellie because obviously he's scared of losing her like he lost Sarah, but Ellie still manages to borrow, or more like bulldoze her way into his very closed-off heart, so that's just nice to see. Some aspects that I really loved this episode was them bringing in Ellie's book of puns. I don't think that was ever in the main story. It was in the first game as an extra storyline about Ellie before she met Joel. And in it, I'll just call it her friend for now, gives her a book of puns. And more than just being stupid jokes to laugh at, the puns play a really important role here in getting Joel and Ellie closer together. I really loved that moment when they're sleeping in the tall building after Joel has put glass all around the doorway. Also, side note, why didn't he put the glass on the other side as well? Or maybe he did, but they didn't show it. But either way, it didn't work because they got snuck up on at night. But anyway, I loved Ellie telling the diarrhea joke and them both laughing together at it, and Joel saying it was so stupid. It was a very sweet moment, and I had this huge smile on my face as they were laughing together. I also loved that they included the scene where Ellie finds Bill's magazine. After last week's episode, I wasn't sure if they'd still include it, and I'm so glad that they did in this episode. And seeing Joel's face, like a deer caught in headlights, and his discomfort when Ellie asks him why the pages are stuck together was extremely funny. Obviously, it's just Ellie teasing him. So even though they're still sort of strangers, they've already developed this father-daughter-like relationship where Ellie's like making fun of her father figure, so to speak. So that was very nice to see that happening. Another moment I really liked was when they're spending the night in the woods and Ellie asks if anyone is going to find them. And Joel says something to the effect of that they're safe. But then we get a shot later when Ellie's asleep and Joel is standing up, keeping watch, wide awake with his gun. I love that kind of storytelling because it says a lot about Joel's character and where his headspace is at. So in this moment, he wants to protect Ellie, he wants to keep her safe and make her feel safe, but he doesn't want her to know that. And he also keeps reminding her that she's not family, that she's just cargo, but of course we as the audience know better. Another example of a character saying one thing but doing another is when Ellie says she's not tired, and then we immediately cut to her sleeping with her mouth open. And though this is just played for laughs, it also reminds us that Ellie does always put on this tough act, but she is still just a kid. Just a couple of things on Ellie and Joel's characterization compared to the game. I know I've touched on this in my previous reviews, but does anyone else feel that Ellie has a very different energy in the show to the game? Like, this Ellie asks so many questions. The one in the games did too, but this TV show Ellie is just at another level. Like, she's very hyper and rapid fires questions at Joel one after the other. And sometimes it's asking questions just for the sake of asking questions, like there's no real purpose behind each question she's asking. And also the darker tone that this Ellie has, for example, wanting a gun all the time and having some kind of fascination with them, like maybe even enjoying the violence. And also last episode when she cut open the infected person's head for no apparent reason other than curiosity, it seems like. That scene just had the energy of someone a little psycho or weird, but I never had that impression from Ellie in the games. I'm not sure if they're trying to set Ellie up for what happens in part 2, which is why they've gone down a darker route for Ellie. But then, later in the episode, when she gets affected by having to shoot someone, it wasn't that emotional or impactful for me because she just seems like someone who could already kill someone else quite easily and get over it pretty quickly too. So it didn't feel like this huge character moment for her. In the game, after she kills someone to save Joel, she looks very uncertain about what she's done, and she wants reassurance from Joel that she did the right thing. And that for me was more nuanced, and I felt bad for Ellie having to be put in that situation. But in the show, I just didn't feel bad for Ellie, even though they showed her like crying a little bit and wiping her face. I just didn't have that same emotional resonance that I had from the game. And I think that's largely because of how the TV show has portrayed Ellie so far. But that's just my thoughts on it, so please tell me how you're finding this Ellie and if you do think that she's different from the game, and if she is, do you prefer her like this? Do you think they've improved on her character, or do you sort of miss the previous Ellie, or the Ellie from the games? In terms of Joel, the show's Joel seems a lot softer and kinder than the game. Even though this episode we do see him kill a kid who's begging for his life, and even kills this kid with his own knife to save the bullets, and he also implies that he's killed innocent people before. So even despite all of that, this Joel still seems really soft and gentle and sweet, not at all like a tough and hardened guy. I'm not sure why, but does anyone else get that same feeling? Let me know in the comments below. This episode, we're also introduced to a new character who is not in the games, Kathleen and her group. I'm very curious to see where they go with this. I'm sure that the big sinkhole at the bottom of the building is a huge horde of infected ready to burst through, and I'm excited to see that happen. We also get to meet Sam and Henry at the end of the episode. I've been really looking forward to seeing them. I really enjoyed them in the game, so I do hope they do their story justice and give more meat to their story, the way the show did for Frank and Bill last episode. So those are my thoughts on episode 4. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Like the video if you did, and subscribe if you want to hear more. I'll catch you later.